All right, so good evening. So the way that Q&A works for those of you that are maybe new or a little bit new or you haven't participated in this format, you can either post a question in the chat box, or if it's easier for you to come off of mute and we can just have a conversation, you can ask your question out loud. That's fine as well. So again, no question is a bad question. I really want to encourage you to ask questions. This is it's valuable time. It's valuable time, not because I'm sitting here and I know all the answers to everything, but it's valuable time because I have a little bit of experience and I learned a couple of things here and there along the way. And I might be able to help move you past some of where you might feel stuck or challenged, or maybe you're experiencing something in the business that you don't understand from a leadership perspective, from a how to answer certain questions perspective. So I'd really encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. And if there are no questions, then no big deal. We'll end the call a little bit early tonight. But again, I would encourage you to take advantage of this time. Here's what I can share with you. There are several people that are on the call right now that were in Ibiza, and when we started these calls with them 4 or 5 years ago, and we did these open Q&As, guess who asked the most questions? It was the people that are on that trip right now. They were the people that asked the most questions. That's a clue. That's a clue. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. The people that are on this call right now that were also on the trip, were the people that asked the most questions when they first started 4 and 5 years ago. The people that were on the trip this last weekend, who you saw on the catamaran, you saw taking up Nikki Beach, you saw all these things, they're the ones asking the most questions. And why were they the ones asking the most questions? Because they were hungry for answers. They were hungry for answers. So it's very simple. So Michelle says, I still ask the most questions. That's true. Okay, cool. Great question. So what is my best tip for starters within Isagenix? So a couple of things. The first thing is commit one time. Just commit once. The same thing as a partnership, the same thing as a relationship, the same thing as a marriage. I'm committed. I'm committed. I'm going to work as hard as I can to enjoy this process and to make this relationship work. And I'm going to do everything in my power to grow myself for the parts that I'm responsible for so that I can contribute to this relationship. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is that understanding that this is a team sport, and you will be 10 times more successful if you lean into the team and if you lean into getting help from the people who have been here before you. One of the biggest mistakes that new people make coming into network marketing is they operate like employees, or they operate like solopreneurs, trying to do everything on their own, trying to figure out everything on their own. And it makes for a really painful process. The third thing that I'd highly recommend is never miss an event, a live event especially, but never miss an event. Really plug into the events. The fourth thing, follow the system. Follow the system and learn how to create duplication in the organization and learn the skills that come with network marketing. And the last thing is be here a year from now. Be here 1 year from now. There are several people on this call right now who for the first 3 years, actually, I see Donna right in the middle of my screen. Donna, I hope it's okay if I share your story. But Donna is someone who for 3 years made almost no money in Isagenix, almost no money in Isagenix, but she was on every call. She came to as many events as possible. And the reason she made no money wasn't because she wasn't trying. It just wasn't her full-time focus. She's a single mom. She was moving away from a very, very toxic work environment where she had been for years. And she just didn't have the mental capacity to really focus on giving the business the time that it required. But when those things cleared up and the timing was right for her and she really made the decision, let me put it in perspective for you. In her 4th year, and please correct me if my numbers are wrong. Okay, so she earned 6,000 pounds in her first 3 years, 6,000 in her first 3 years total. That's a whopping 2,000 a year. Okay, so the truth is, if we're having a transparent conversation, which we are, she probably spent almost as much on products as she earned in commissions. It's a really important point, more. Okay. So she probably didn't even make 6 grand in those years from a profit perspective. She was probably at a loss. Now, I don't know how it works in European or British taxes, but in the United States, it's expected that you're going to lose money in your business for the first 3 years. And so there are tax exceptions within our tax code for small business owners, because again, I want you to hear me loud and clear. It is understood that you are most likely going to lose money in your first 3 years of being a business owner. But in her 4th year, Donna, do you want to type in the chat box how much you made in your 4th year? Watch this. Ready? Abracadabra. 60. And then this year, what will you do? Total of 100. So that's pretty good. Okay. Now, is that a typical result? Not necessarily. Is everyone going to achieve that? No. But I shared Donna's story going back to the original question by Ayla, which is Donna stayed plugged in. Donna stayed plugged in. So stay plugged in. That's what I would say. All right. Okay, I heard in a podcast about the ATM group method where you add people to a group and you tag them in a video. Is this something we have an ATM group, and what's the video I should tag? Great. So we personally don't use a traditional ATM group. The closest thing we have to an ATM group is the Experience Your Breakthrough group. I believe that the Belgians and the Dutch have something similar as well that they're running in the Dutch language as well, I believe. I've never been a complete fan of the ATM group because for me, it makes people overly reliant on Facebook from a business building perspective. And if you look at where the numbers are going from a social media perspective, more and more people are spending time on Instagram, more and more people are spending time on LinkedIn, more and more people are moving away from Facebook. And one of the concerns I always had was if you make your business dependent on Facebook exclusively as your prospecting funnel, if for some reason something happens with the groups or the algorithms change, which they have dramatically changed within the groups, dramatically, you risk massive amounts of exposure to the very people that you're trying to communicate with in that group. So if you go on oureasytraining.com, we have a formula that we've designed that's similar to ATM that I designed 6 or 7 years ago when ATM became popular, that we have found to be far more effective because it's a much more custom tailored experience, whereas the ATM experience is very generic. Like you said, what's the one video I would tag somebody? And what we've done that's a little bit different, again, I would invite you to study the training that we've done on it. It's a really custom tailored experience. So I'm going to add you to the group, Michael, and I'm going to share a video with you or an article with you or a podcast with you that's specific to what you are looking for, not what I think you should be watching. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tag a couple of people who remind me of you, right? So maybe you have the same concerns in getting started that Sonder had, so or that Roger had, or whatever it may be, and I'm going to tag them and say, hey Roger, hey Sonder, this is my friend Michael. Just like you, he has some concerns about. Let's say it's a product person, someone that wants to use the products, the nutrition. He has some concerns about whether or not he's going to be eating enough food every day. Can you please share with what your experience has been? Or maybe from a business perspective, hey guys, Michael, Sonder, Michael, just like you, has some experience in the network marketing industry, but he was burned by his last company. Can you share a little bit about how your experience was different? And so what we're doing there is we're creating social proof within the process as well. Okay, so again, oureasytraining.com under step 2, you'll see something called Experience Your Breakthrough. There's a whole training on there on how to use that group or how to use a group like that. So that's my suggestion. And yes, you got to be hungry, Les Brown. Okay, this is a question from someone named Eden. I don't recognize that name at all. I feel like we have someone that's trying to sneak on the call, and maybe we'll have to excuse that person. The best way to get cycles to grow. Okay. Cycles, if you understand what cycles are in the compensation plan, cycles are based on 2 things. Cycles are, 1, based on retention. That means customers reordering. And they're also based on leverage, and that's helping your team to produce results. And hands down, the way to grow cycles, in my experience, is to really focus on what we talked about on the last week's call, which is systemization and duplication. Creating a process so that every single person, when they come into the organization, looks at the process and goes, this looks familiar to me, I recognize this, and I have the ability to do this. I can mimic this. One of the things that hurts cycles quite a bit is people constantly changing their approach, constantly changing their strategy, constantly changing how they bring people aboard, constantly changing what the very first step is. And so again, simplicity and consistency is the greatest way to grow cycles over time. Consistency and simplicity. And then of course, you have to run massive numbers to attract some higher productive, higher producing type people. And remembering, in any sales environment, no matter what kind of business structure you're in, network marketing, real estate sales, does not matter what kind of industry you're in, 80% of your revenue, of your profit, is going to come from 20% of your production team. So again, 80% is going to come from 20%, which is really fascinating, which is why oftentimes you'll hear in network marketing, find 2 to 5 people to focus on and drive those people deep. So those 2 to 5 people are going to be your real drivers, but we can't forget about the remaining group of people who are there doing just a little bit. Okay. So in my experience, the key to network marketing success is you want to teach a lot of people how to do just a little bit, and then you'll find a couple of people who do a lot. Again, it's the 80-20 rule. It's Pareto's principle, and it applies to our business model as much as any business model in the world. Okay, so PVC 1, 2, 3 versus Our Easy Training. Okay, great question. So if you study Our Easy Training, and if you look at the formula and the flow of the conversation, it is PVC. It's something we designed long before PVC came out. And what PVC is nice, and it's a really nice attempt by the company to help people who come into organizations that don't have built out systems like we've created. Okay, that's really what it's designed for. In my opinion, and I'm not talking out of turn here, we've been very vocal about this with the company from our perspective. As it stands right now, PVC is really missing some of the context that we provide within our system. What does that opening conversation look like? How are you actually connecting with somebody? How are you even getting them to say yes in the first place, to want to see some photos, right? Are you actually getting their permission for them to want to view a video as opposed to just kind of spamming a video into their inbox, right? And then are you actually using constructive closing techniques to ask for the sale in the first place so that sending a cart makes sense and is likelier to get them to buy? So again, if you pay attention to Our Easy Training and the structure of the conversation, the order is the same, but we've built in an actual applicable sales type conversation that's going to lend itself to a higher conversion rate when it comes to enrolling people. Does that help answer your question? Okay. Okay. 130,000 so far. Thank you, Donna. Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. So Sandra says, can I explain why events are the heartbeat of our network marketing business, and also who should be hosting events, company versus field? Okay, so this is a professional question. This is a guy that's asking a question based on a lot of experience, and I love that. It's a smart question. Okay, so here's the first reason that events are so important, and it's pretty much the only reason that events are important. The reason that events are important are that they provide the most powerful, irreplaceable tool that we have in our tool belt, and that's social proof. People want to belong to something. Belonging has actually been studied as necessary for human survival. We crave belonging. And so what an event does is it allows a person to walk into a room and meet other people that think like them, that might speak like them, that dream like them, that are willing to work like them, that have positive attitude like them, that maybe read the same books that they read, have the same interests that they have read, but more than anything, that are starting to think about life in a different way than the normal structure that everybody else in their world thinks like. And so what an event provides is a safe space for us to welcome people in and say, hey, you're welcome here. You belong here, you can grow here, you can develop here. And it also allows them to look around the room and go, wait a minute, if this person who was a physiotherapist for years and years and years can do this, why can't I do this? If this person who was a police officer, if this person who was who worked in the sports and fitness world, if this person who's a stay-at-home mom, if this person who has 5 children, if this person who has had a very difficult life, if this person who just lost their job, if this person who had no previous experience, if this person who's an attorney or a doctor or any number of other professional careers, if they're participating in this business model, why not me? So that validation, that social proof is imperative. The other thing that it allows to do is something that is really difficult to translate on Zoom. And that's that it allows for the energy to be exchanged, the energy in the room for people to feel that there's something I should really pay attention to here. I remember maybe one of the most important things I ever said when I was in the early days of building the Dutch market, and Judy, of course, was in the room that night, and Essie, you were there. I think we were in Haarlem for an event. And I'll never forget what I said was, I wish I could take I wish I could take a little memory drive. Remember, you were there as well, Kaya, right? Yeah, I wish I could take a little memory drive and take what I see in my head for this market. I wish I could take it and plug it into your heart. And that whole room, I'll never forget, in that moment went, okay, I can feel this, I can see this, there's something here for us. And so that's what events do. And who should be hosting events? The field should be hosting events. Never wait for the company to do anything. Let's make this very clear, okay? If we were looking at this from an old school network marketing perspective, I wanna make something very clear. Here is the job of Isagenix Corporate, very simple. Isagenix Corporate's job is to do just a couple of things. One, their job is to source, manufacture, and develop the products, number one. Number two, their job is to distribute the products to the customer that you have made a sale to. And number three, their job is to pay you on time. That's it. That's it. So I'm going to say that again. The corporate responsibility is only to source, manufacture and formulate the products, to distribute the products to the customers that have been sold products to, and to pay you on time for the sales that you've made. That is it. It is not their job to put on events. It is not their job to build tools. It's not even their job to put on trips like going to Ibiza. That's not their job. We happen to be with a company that goes above and beyond in that context. But the reality is that the field should drive the behavior of the company. The company should not drive the behavior of the field. And so you've got to make the decision of, what do I want this to be about? What kind of community do I want to create? What kind of culture do I want to create? And am I willing to put myself out there starting events, even if it means 2 or 3 people in a little living room, just to start to share the stories? And guess what? For those of you that are somewhat new, or maybe just in the last year, or joined during COVID times when it was all Zoom, guess what? Your whole market exists because we went and did just these little meetings. And some were big and some were little. I remember the very first meeting I ever did with Tommy and Esther and Lisana was at Lisana's aunt's house, I believe. And 2 guests showed up. And one happened to be Lisana's sister. That's it, 2 guests. That's it. But we built from there. I remember going and being in Newcastle when Michelle used to live in Sunderland, and we drove to Red, what was it? I forget, Red something or other, right? And we drove. And we got stuffed into this little room at Vicky's house, I think it was, at Vicky Garrick's house, right? And we got stuffed into this little room and there's like 12 people. But that's how it starts. That's how it starts. I remember another trip where Adele put together an event at a partner's house. It was the first time I ever tried I'm going to butcher the name on how I say it, Droop, D-R-O, Droop, right? The candy, the black licorice tasting candy. Droop, is that how you say it? My horrible English American accent, I apologize. It's disgraceful, I know. Right? So it's those types of small events. It's those types of small events. So Sandra, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. But guys, take initiative. And here's reality. Even if no one shows up, practice doing the presentation. Practice doing the presentation. Have a coffee meeting with somebody. Invite a couple people into your home. Just share the products. It's very simple. It's very simple. Okay. Okay, cool. Yep. Okay, great. Drop. Yeah. First event last Saturday, 4 people is great. 2 people started right away. The others will follow. Now let's look at that for a moment. That's amazing. Okay. So let's look at this for a moment. Okay. So Suzanne has 4 people come, 2 get started. 50%. 50%. Now, are 50% going to get started every single time? Of course not. But if you go from 4 people and you get 2 started, and the next time you have 10 people and 4 or 5 get started, and the next time you have 20 people and 8 to 10 get started, and the next time you have 40 people and 10 to 15 get started, because your skill set grows and your influence grows. And then guess what? It's not just your people that are getting started. You've created an environment where, hey, come back next week and bring 2 people with you. And now those people get started, and that's how the numbers really start to grow. Okay. All right, Thursday, June 23rd, opportunity event in, I'm not even going to try and say that, but somewhere in the Netherlands, it looks like. Hilvarenbeek. Hilvarenbeek? Hilvern, yeah, close? Terrible, horrible, okay? At least I try. Any other questions? What other questions? What other questions? No question's a bad question. We have a couple more minutes. What about, oh, here's this Eden woman again. Really annoying, this one. What about, I think I know where she's going. Okay. What about when friends and family don't approve of the new business? Okay. Drop a 1 in the chat box if you've had some people that are very close to you be critical or dismissive or maybe even rude at times about what you were doing. Okay, everybody, good. Notice so you're not alone, okay? To put it in perspective, just so you understand, Eden and I, when we first started, our family had a text message thread going around that we were not in, making fun of us, telling us saying how stupid we were gonna lose money, we were crazy for leaving our jobs, it was never gonna work, right? They were all laughing at us. They are not laughing now, okay? But in the beginning, it can be challenging and it can be frustrating, and more than anything, it can be really confusing, right? It can be very confusing how you can have people in your life who in your mind are the closest people to you in your life, and you would think that automatically they would support you, right? Because in your mind, well, I feel like I would support them if they were doing something new, which may or may not be a true statement, because we have to be honest with ourselves. I'd be willing to bet that there are choices that your friends have made in the past that you did not approve of, that you judged, that you were critical of. Maybe a partner that they got back together with. Maybe they were in a really unhealthy relationship, and no matter how much advice you left them, you gave them, they stayed in that relationship. And eventually you got to a point as a friend where you're like, I don't agree with this at all. I can't support that. How many of you, just drop a 2 in the chat box if you've also not approved of some of your friends' choices and decisions, at least at one point in your humanity. You know, maybe some of you have come into a great sense of enlightenment and awakening, and you are some sort of a deity that doesn't have judgment or criticism in other people's lives. Congratulations to you. I don't buy it. We're humans. We do this. We judge. It's what we do. Doesn't mean it's healthy, but it is something that we do. So first and foremost is don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a hypocrite, okay? Of course, people are going to judge what you're doing. Hey, can you guys just chill out for a second? I have 3 dogs here right now. See the little guy in the back? That's Smokey. Hey, he doesn't like that. We're watching our friend's dog. Hey, everybody relax. Everybody calm down. George, excuse me one moment. I'll get them out of here. Come on, go. Come on, you should go. Okay. Bye, guys. Okay. So first things first, don't be a hypocrite. But secondly, we have to understand why they're criticizing you. And we have to understand what it is that they're really doing by being dismissive or rejecting what you're inviting them into. When we're born, no matter who you are, no matter where in the world you're born, we're born into communities, pre-existing communities, communities that have specific cultural belief systems. Communities believe that this is how you're supposed to work. This is how you're supposed to think. This is how you're supposed to behave. This is how you're supposed to, this is the religion you're supposed to believe in. This is the football team you're supposed to support. These are the rules to exist within this community. How many of you, just drop a 3 in the chat box, had parents that said, this is the way we do things in our family. This is how we do things. This is what's going to make you a good person, right? And our teachers and our coaches and our parents use all kinds of different communication things based on the technology that they have access to, because maybe they don't know any better, to simply pass along what they were taught. Okay. And what starts to happen little by little as we decide to move outside of the norms of that society, the people who remain in that society don't understand how to process what they're witnessing. And what I mean by that is what they're observing is that you are leaving the community. And in their minds, anything outside of the norms of that community is dangerous. Anything outside of the norms is unsafe for you. People like us don't do things like that. And so rather than understanding how to communicate from a place of love that says, hey, I'm scared for you, which is really what they're communicating, because they're projecting out their own fears, because you're reflecting, taking action in a way that maybe they've been terrified of taking action within their entire lives, rather than just being able to communicate with you from an emotionally intelligent way, they lash out. And they project in different ways. And they project again through criticism, through dismissiveness, through humor, through their own complete disregard for you as an individual human. Because actually what's happening is they're not even seeing what you're doing. They're simply now taking a look at what they're not doing. And so it can be a really painful experience for the people in your community when you basically put a flag in the plant and say, or plant a flag in the sand and say, hey, look, I'm proud of where I come from. I'm okay with where I come from. Like, thank you for everything you've ever taught me. This is not the life for me. I'm going to move outside the box. In fact, I don't even see a box. And that kind of thinking, again, is terrifying for the vast majority of people. And why is it terrifying? Because even though those same people at some time in their life had dreams, eventually they allowed societal communication to override those dreams, and they just began to accept, well, this is just the cards that life dealt me. People like us, this is what we do. You know, for example, like maybe someone's a laborer, you know, maybe someone's a laborer, or I think it's you guys call it in the UK, a joiner, like a contractor, someone who builds homes. And that's what they do every day, day in and day out. And why do they do that? Because that's what their dad did. That's what their grandfather did. That's what their uncles do. That's what their cousins do. And in their mind, all those joiners have this belief system that think, yeah, this is just life. We work, we go to the pub after work, we come home, we don't feel so great. We wake up, we do it again, because that's just how people like us are supposed to live in the world. There's nothing else outside of this world for us. And so again, when you start to move outside of that world, it's fearful for them. That's why some of you have heard me say this before, but how many of you drop a 4 in the chat box that you need to step out of your comfort zone, right? You need to step out of your comfort zone. You need to step out of your comfort zone. Every guru in the world teaches you need to step out of your comfort zone. I don't actually agree with that. I don't think you need to step out of your comfort zone. I believe you need to step out of their comfort zone. They're comfortable with you staying the way you are. They're comfortable with you being miserable. They're comfortable with you maybe struggling financially. They're comfortable with you not having time with your kids. They're comfortable with you never taking vacations. They're comfortable with you barely getting by. They're comfortable with you, having to work every single day. They're comfortable with all that. Why? Why are they comfortable with that? Because in their belief systems, that's the way life is supposed to be. But what's really important is that you understand that just because you were born into a belief system does not mean that you have to accept that belief system as your own. And in fact, the moment you mature as an adult and you realize that you can take responsibility for your own belief systems, all of their criticism, all of their judgments can really be looked at through your new lens of, thank you for caring enough about me to want to protect me. And I love myself enough that I'm going to find out. And maybe you're right. Maybe I'm going to fail. Maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe I will lose money. Maybe I will make money. I have no idea. But what I do know is I know how this life ends. I already know. I've watched my grandparents do it. My parents do it. My cousins do it. My friends do it. I know this. I already know how this movie ends. I've seen this one before. I'm going to go watch a different film. I'm going to go become a new character in a different story that goes on a quest that people like us have been terrified to do. And if that scares you, cool, no worries. But please do me a favor. don't mock me, don't judge me, don't criticize me. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do that to you either. Because that was the mistake I made, everybody. When I was early in my career, very early in my career, and I was an idiot, I was mean and I was rude and I would shame people. Well, you have a job and you don't have vacation time and you're like, how's that inspiring? And so what I realized was in no way, shape, or form was that ever going to create any kind of acceptance for them in their lives about what I was doing with my life. And so what I started to do was just live my life without any concern for what they were saying. And the other thing I did was I stopped talking to them about my businesses. I just stopped. I'll never forget. I said to Eden, we were going to a family event at my brother's house. And I said, no conversations about Isagenix, none. And if anyone asks, watch how I handle it. Watch how I handle it. And sure enough, one of my cousins made some comment, Isagenix. And I said, hey, it sounds like you're interested in learning more about what we do. But being that this is a family night, I'm not really interested in talking about business. So if you'd like to learn more about what I do, you can text me and we can schedule a meeting and I'll see if I have time to sit down with you and explain it to you. I'll see if I can fit you in. So if you'd like some time on my schedule, text me in the next couple of days. And again, I'll see if I can find some time. But other than that, not interested in talking about business right now. I'm here to celebrate with my family. In that moment, that was a huge transitional point for my entire family. Because what they realized was, he's not messing about. They're serious about this. They're serious about this. And guess what? That person who made that little comment, she was the first to join. She was the first. And that same person, we retired her from her corporate career within 12 months. And then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And what went from a thread of 8 to 10 of them talking terrible things about Eden and I became, I think, 18 to 20 of them total who are now in our organization. And 10 years later, that same person gets paid every single week. So don't fight, okay? I've said, maybe you've seen my videos on this before, but I have a very simple philosophy. Don't judge their judgments. Don't criticize their criticisms. Don't have an opinion on their opinions. Don't judge their judgments. Don't criticize their criticisms. Don't have an opinion on their opinions. Because when you know who you are, you stop defending who you are. When you know who you are, you stop defending who you are. And when you know who you are, you stop apologizing for who you are. And the more you find out who you are, and the more you live in who you are in your true essence, the more you give them permission to explore that side of them in a whole new way, because they start to look at you, same in a reflection, going, maybe people like me can do something different. Maybe I can transform my life. So we're about 5 minutes over. Great questions, y'all. Thank you so much for this conversation this evening. I hope this was valuable for you. I'm going to post in both team pages, what did you learn? Hopefully you'll engage in those for your team members' benefit, your benefit as well. Have a phenomenal week. Happy Father's Day to those of you that were celebrating this afternoon, this evening. Lots of love, and please stop going on trips without me. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.